Exxaro is primarily a coal producer with extensive operations delivering steam coal for export and power station coal to Eskom. It also has a valuable stake in Sishen iron ore and mineral sands company Tronox. It has a market cap of 66 billion rand, a price to earnings ratio of 11 and a dividend yield of 4.6. Well, this is the heavyweight in the industry, so to speak. How do you feel about it? You like the industry as a whole. This one you've got to be backing.
Well, look, certainly Exxaro, I mean, a lot of different parts to it. The biggest part in it is obviously the iron ore, being its 20% holding in Sishen Iron Ore Company. Kumba, the listed entity, owns the other 77%, and then there's a bit of other BE partners in there. But if you look at Exxaro and you strip out the value of a Sishen Iron Ore Company, assuming Kumba is fairly priced at the current market cap, that leaves you with about a 20 billion rand left for the rump of Exxaro. Now, what is the rump? The rump is the coal interests, their mineral sands and pigment processing plant, which is Tronox, and then they've got a small iron ore venture in West Africa, which they're now looking to develop.
Sipho Nkosi, he's a good manager, definitely got the support of the market.
It's a fascinating story because Anglo needed two things. They firstly needed empowerment partners in their coal operations, and then they needed an empowerment partner in the iron ore mine. So they basically put Sipho into business. They control, Sipho and his chums control, Esizwe, which in turn controls Exxaro, 52%. He personally is worth about 2 billion rand. The business basically has, as Jonathan says, this totally unmanaged, absolute spigot of cash flowing from the Kumba thing. And I guess you just got to say right place, right time, because when they got it, obviously Kumba was still in the early stages and the global Chinese demand for iron ore was early days and so on. The coal operations, mostly the one around Matla Power Station, a big thing out there, and then they're developing the new power station for Medupi up near Ellerstrasse.
I want to talk about the share price action right now, looking relatively heady at current levels. Are we missing a crucial part of the graph? Is this disproportionate in terms of our time period?
Well, I mean, Exxaro has done extremely well. But I mean, like I was saying, if you just look at the rump, it's valued at 20 billion. But I look at the coal interest. The coal interest, when the Medupi coal starts flowing, that'll earn about 3 billion rand a year after tax. Tronox can earn probably a similar number. So if you look at that, you're paying a 3 or a 4 PE for the remainder of the assets.
So you'd be crazy not to buy it at current levels, is what you're saying?
Well, I do. We own the Exxaro rump note. Deutsche Bank has written that where they take out the Kumba interest, and I think it's incredibly cheap, and yes, we do own it.
And Paul, are you buying Exxaro at current levels?
Look, the difficulty with all of the resources shares is that they've done very well in terms of their production over the last 5 to 10 years because of the demand for the stuff they produce. But currently, they're all on very low price to earnings ratios. So if you go back to 2007, 2008, it was a much rosier time. We know that's when Billiton, Anglo and the likes were trading at all-time highs. Now they've done a lot of work on the business, but they're not getting the credit for it. Reason being, people are worried about China, whether it's having a slowdown, whether next year's Chinese GDP number will be 6 and the one after that will be 5. So,
But you don't think that. You're positive on the Chinese story.
Yes, exactly.
You're positive
China
on the
bulls.
global environment.
So, these are the kind of stocks that we think are cheap. The question really is, this is a world of choices. You've got Billiton, you've got Anglo, you've got Rios if you're invested globally, you've got Xstrata. Locally, you've got African Rainbow Minerals, you've got this one. Is this the company that's going to take you forward? Yeah, sort of. Maybe.
Is it diversified enough? Obviously, we've spoken about the mineral sands, Tronox element, etc., etc. But with the rump being a pure coal play, effectively, are you not exposing yourself to one resource, whereas you could take a diversified, like a BHP or a Billiton, as Paul is throwing forward to, and get appropriate diversification in the resource story?
If anything, I would actually say you would want a pure play rather than a diversified. This is quite diversified already because you've got iron ore, you've got coal, you've got mineral sands. So you've got 3 parts to it. They're also doing some renewable energy, but that's pretty small. But I mean, I prefer buying rather pure play, so rather buy something that's only got coal.
This is more focused, you're saying, even with you're saying coal, iron ore and mineral sands. Paul?
What it's focused on, unfortunately, is South Africa. Now, when the global investor looks in the newspaper this morning and sees there are people busy killing each other at Marikana section of the Lonmin mine because the one union is fighting with the other union. They're blaming each other. Then the cops are going in. I can tell you that thing is not going to get resolved in any other way than that the cops are going to send in the heavy artillery and there's going to be a lot of heads banged together. I just don't think the South African context with all of the safety related problems and the mineral rights challenges and the investment environment.
All right,
with
you're
regard to that.
depressing us. Enough from
That's
you.
why people prefer the global miners.
And how about that story then? That's a fair question. Let's say a global play over a South African play. What would you go for right now?
Well, it all comes down to price, really. I mean, obviously, you maybe put a little bit more of a risk premium on pure South African assets. But coming back to Exxaro, I think it's well managed. It's going to pay a 5% dividend yield. It's on an 8 PE forward. If you strip out Kumba, it's on a 4 PE on the rump. I think it's cheap, and I think it's one you should own.
Well, I think we need to. Anything else you want to
Well,
say?
what about Tronox? Because in a private conversation on Hot Stocks, I said, this mineral sands thing is rubbish business, they should throw it away. Turns out they managed somehow to push the thing
list
into
Tronox separately on the New York Stock
which
Exchange.
is worth, I saw this morning, $1.7 billion, so their 40% stake of it is worth, real money. So I was definitely wrong there. Mineral
I'm
sands
glad you admitted when you're wrong.
is that stuff which they dig up on the beach and then somehow they get it to use it in paint and so on. So I guess you've got to hand it to them. So my previous ranting about how they should unbundle the company, that's probably not
Now
right.
you wish you'd actually taken advantage.
Well, nobody
of
called me afterwards to say that was a bad idea, so I assume they were just ignoring me.
I think let's go to hot or not on Exxaro. Jonathan.
I think it's hot at the current levels. I think the better play is obviously to buy the Exxaro ramp note. But I mean, Exxaro on its own is hot.
Paul, hot or not?
No, sadly not hot for me.